8 a.m. and I call to order the May 5th, 2026 Board of Trustees meeting. The district is in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act by notifying the media of the date, time, and place of the meeting. The district tapes the meetings for accuracy in preparing the minutes. I now yield the floor to Mrs. Flashnick.
Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence.
Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Flashnick. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Do I hear a motion to enter executive session?
Madam Chair, I motion to enter executive session to discuss employment recommendations and updates.
Thank you, Mr. Pizzuti. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Rice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We will now enter executive session.
Don't feel that they have opportunities. The message that I want to give to them is, when you don't know, you're gonna find, the ways like I failed in the past, like seen, like capable, and like full of possibilities.
Every day students walk through our doors and they can't leave their emotions, they can't leave their baggage, they can't leave their hardships at the door, just like we as grown-ups. They're carrying more than just backpacks. They're carrying invisible weight. We're educators, yes, but we're also listeners, regulators, coaches, and advocates to help create a space where they're able to understand their thoughts, they're able to understand how to manage their feelings. I keep a drawing in my office that I think really represents our work as school counselors, and it's a piece of artwork from a student who is going through a really tough time. And in that drawing, he's reaching out and he's asking for help, his hand's raised, and I'm standing there next to him. And then there's speech bubbles above our heads, and his says, it's a cry for help. It's saying, help me. And then, mine simply says, here, grab my hand. And that's the work. That's what school counselors across Lexington District 1 do. I am very proud of this accomplishment, but I think I also share it with the many counselors across our state.
My proudest moments happen when a student experiences a total shift in self-perception. Those moments when they're like, Miss Shannon, I didn't think I could do that. That's when I know I've done more than just teach theater. Witnessing a student's confidence bloom and see them stand in that confidence, that is an incredible achievement.
Beyond the pull of gravity and the limits of the traditional classroom, Shannon Boatwright launches students into a universe where creativity, empathy, and confidence collide. Teaching is her calling, and the arts are her rocket fuel, powering experiences that lift students beyond the stage and into who they are becoming. Shannon consistently goes above and beyond, helping learners discover the power of relationships, generosity, and belonging.
I help my students discover their voice and make a positive impact by empowering them, by making sure that they know that they can use their voice to make decisions, to make choices, and to keep moving forward as independent learners.
Guided by a belief that every child deserves high expectations and unwavering support, Fannie Bowman creates a learning universe where effort matters more than perfection, and students are encouraged to try, grow, and believe in themselves. She knows that connection holds learning together. Through shared stories, open dialogue, and honoring each student's identity. By embracing collaboration and remaining open to change, she helps build a community where both students and educators continue to grow and reach new heights together.
I think the number one thing is in my class, regardless if it's related to academics or not, I have a poster that we kind of live by. And we say in math, mistakes are expected. We inspect mistakes in order to correct ourselves, and we're all imperfect. So that motto and mindset, I do think fosters the type of classroom that I have today.
At the heart of Sadia Cardwell's mission is one guiding question: how do we create space for every student to belong, grow, and succeed? Every choice she makes is intentional, focused on building safe orbits where students can be themselves, take risks, stumble, try again, and be truly heard.
As a music teacher, I quite literally help students find their voice each day. I truly believe that every child is musical, so I think it's really great whenever we're able to help kids realize their voice and realize that they are musical and that they are talented. And I think anytime that they are playing in an ensemble or singing together, they're collaborating with other people in a positive way, and that's just going to help enrich their lives.
With a vision set firmly on the future, Leanne Glimpf believes that inspiring the next generation of educators starts with sharing our love for teaching. By speaking positively about the profession, mentoring future teachers, and opening classrooms to curious learners, she works to launch new educators into orbit. Leanne believes that when educators, students, and families unite as mission partners, that force that fuels lifelong learning is strengthened.
The moment that I am the most proud of in my career is about a student that had limited verbal skills. He never really came to any of our PTO events because communication was a perceived barrier for him and his family. I made a AAC bracelet where it had some picture symbols on it, and he actually ended up coming to our trick-or-treat night and was able to trick-or-treat by pointing to the picture symbols and interact with his peers, and it was just a really powerful moment.
As a speech-language pathologist, Hope Hartley works in a universe where voices take many forms: spoken words, gestures, signs, symbols, and technology, and every one of them matters. She has witnessed the quiet triumphs: a first sound after months of practice, a student finding the courage to speak, a family celebrating a breakthrough they once only hoped for. In her mission, helping students be heard doesn't just change learning, it changes lives.
I ran into some parents at the mall of a student I taught 3-4 years ago. And as soon as they saw me, their eyes lit up. They're like, "Mr. Earhart, Mr. Earhart." And they were like, "Our daughter talks about you all the time still. And she told me that she wanted to be a teacher just because of you." And so it was kind of neat seeing the fruit of everything that happened a few years later. And it was virtual too, so I never actually got to see them in person.
Parker Earhart believes the strongest force in any community is intentional connection. As an educator, Parker understands that every interaction, no matter how brief, carries weight. By choosing presence, compassion, and purpose in everyday moments, he helps build safe, supportive spaces where students, families, and colleagues feel valued. In his classroom universe, it's these small, meaningful connections that keep people grounded and ultimately
Okay, welcome back. Do I hear a motion to conclude executive session?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we conclude executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Pizzuti. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. Do I hear a motion regarding certified staff recommendations for the 26-27 school year?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve 77 certified recommendations for the 2026-27 school year.
Thank you, Mr. Pizzuti. Do you have a second? Thank you, Mr. Rice. Any discussion? Ms. Price, how are we doing?
We are also always looking for more great educators. So if you have any that would like to be employed, send them our way.
All right, all those in favor for 77 certified staff recommendations, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the motion carries. Do I hear a motion regarding administrative staff recommendations for the 26-27 school year.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we expect we expect two newly hired support staff for 2025-26 year and two hired support staff for 2026-2027 school year.
Thank you, Mr. Trustees. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries.
All at our last presentation on our facility study results. To review capacity terms and calculations about how we take a look at where our schools sit today and what is driving the recommendations for renovations, additions, and new builds. And then after that, we will review potential next steps on where we go.
Thank you, Dr. Price. And before we get started, just to introduce a few folks that are here. Ms. Michelle Smith will be leading the McMillan-Pasden portion of the presentation. But also Mr. Joel Carter and Ms. Cecilia Nelson, both architects with MPS here as well, and available to help answer questions and help facilitate this discussion. I'd be remiss if I did not also mention that Ms. Margaret Mitchum is here as well, that can provide, good from the front lines information over the last, probably 20 years that Pleasant Hill Elementary has been open. So this presentation isn't about Pleasant Hill Elementary, but it does serve as a good example to lead our discussion as we look at different types of capacities and learn more there. First thing that we just want to again explain is just about the method that we sought to go about to understand the growth that this area is receiving, and our facility planning over the coming years. We've taken a very deliberate approach. It's kind of a two-pronged approach to do an independent demographic study and then an independent facility study where the information does feed the subsequent report. But what I'd just like to point out here, the demographer was charged with forecasting growth in our areas, and specifically the attendance areas that our school footprints have. And we crossed that over. We layered that with two different ways to look at our current instructional situation, how we are serving our kids in classrooms, looking at that regarding our building envelope footprint, the building capacity, and then also looking at it with the portables that the district has that are being used as active classrooms, and then forecasting that enrollment growth across those two ways of measuring your school in terms of the number of students that are being served. The facility study used those same data inputs, those same capacity inputs that were provided by the school to the demographer, were utilized by the facility study contractors to look at permanent facility planning. What type of planning should this district consider as you look at the growth that's occurring, and what type of long-term solutions would this board want to consider as we look at the district's growth? And I emphasize long-term solutions, not temporary solutions. Portables are historically looked at as being temporary solutions for providing classroom space, but in the facility planning industry, that's not a viable solution for a long-term growth in capacity. So with Pleasant Hill Elementary, going back and looking at the numbers, 2023 numbers were the ones that we selected just to run the calculations on. 878 students was the enrollment in that year, and was evident on both reports. Building capacities at 680, the portable capacity at 480. That number is generated from 20 students per portable classroom, and that all with the assumption that all portable classrooms could be used, giving that total capacity of 1160. So the two different percentages that are starkly different, of comparing that load of students to the building envelope, it's over capacity, 129%. Looking at it across the portables, there is room there. It's at 76% when you just are doing that, that I say simple math because this is just one way to look at it. And it is starkly different. It's starkly different because there's almost a whole school of portables sitting outside the walls of Pleasant Hill Elementary School. The demographer, of course, shared his report with us back December of this past year, and when you look at the heat map with the total capacity, how that school is being used, Pleasant Hill sits comfortably in that green area. But again, that's looking at the total capacity, and that was the information straight from the demographer's report. Again, another graphic just showing that total capacity and projecting it out over the next 10 years. Again, it stays in that comfortable area because of the portable classroom space that does exist on that campus. Comparing it back to the building envelope and the building capacity, that 680 student number, again, obviously, you see a lot more red. It is over capacity when you look at the building itself and don't take into account those portable classroom units. Again, the same graphic from the demographer's report. The other thing that we just to again review, again looking at the demographer's projections, you can see how the Pleasant Hill Elementary School area, which is a very tight attendance area, but it is housing dense. You can see how that attendance area is expected to grow. And again, this was demographer projections. The year 2025, that is this year, 2025, 2026, that is this year, and he had forecasted 842 students. There are 896 students there today, so this was one of the schools that was slightly under-projected. Some of his projections were a little bit over, some were a little bit under, but again, this is long-range growth analysis, but this is an area where, again, students are still moving in at a rapid pace, even more rapid than was projected by our demographer. We started receiving our workshops and updates from McMillan Pasden this past February, and again, McMillan Pasden charged with a different task than our demographer, long-range facilities planning. And you see again the graphic straight from their report, which was the same graphic as the demographer, looking at the building capacity and making facility recommendations based upon the permanent structure.
Excited to be here. Thank you so much for having us back. And oh yeah, sure. Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Again, so thankful to be here, and grateful to the partnership with the district to work with us on this important study and this important work. We wanted to touch on a concept in order to dive deeper into capacity and to get our arms around all of the components that it really takes out how to plan a facility with a number of students. Again, how to serve kids in the classroom. Start off in planning a facility, us with the district as designers, target population, how many kids at school size to serve. So for example, a lot of your elementary schools serve, that might be a target population that we're charged with. From that number, we determine classrooms, a number of classrooms. I'll walk you through a planning formula that we use for that specific. When thinking about a school population number, again, 900, we also need to think about the shared assembly. Spaces such as the cafeteria, the gymnasium, that are also utilized to serve students. So for example, for a cafeteria, lunch period. At 900 number, we might say, well, how many lunch periods will the school have? Will it have 3 lunch periods to serve 300 students? Have 4 lunch periods to serve plus students at any one time. It just, it really depends on the third component on this slide that we want to consider is the daily schedule. So we want to think about school might function throughout the day, or if they might be functioning on a block schedule. We know some high schools move to block schedule, so we need to think about the time duration that is assigned to every learning space. We also want to consider the target teacher to student ratio for districts, and this can change and evolve over time. These ratios that you see in this box, elementary, middle, and high school, were given to us by the district. Now, at this time, this isn't to say that that teacher to student ratio may have been different 10 years ago when some of these facilities were built. It may have been, more along the lines of 1 to 25 or 1 to 26, but these are the current ratios that we have been given, that we have incorporated into our study. And then we also want to take into account any future that the district wants to accommodate upon building a school. So for instance, Joel and Cecilia have worked on many schools in this district. Many of those schools have been sized for, with a target capacity of 850 students, but the core capacity may accommodate 1,000. So that is a future planning move in order to upsize the core capacity in order to accommodate anticipated growth. So we want to capture what that future planning component may be. What this slide is kind of focused on building capacity, school population. What it actually doesn't capture is the ramifications to the site that the school population will also have. So for instance, for site planning, we have to take into account the number of projected car riders, the number of projected buses that will serve the school in order to adequately plan the site and ensure that there's enough stacking, exterior play space, et cetera, to satisfy the building. Okay, there's a lot of text on this slide, but again, we just wanted to review all of the terms that have been used and that may be out there that are up for discussion. So capacity as designed, this number again is a designer's formula in order to determine the number of classrooms when we're programming a school in a space. Capacity is currently used. This is a number that includes portables. So we've taken our designer's formula and we've applied it to every facility in this district in order to really understand how you all are using your facilities at this point in time. So we've made a calculation in the review in our study of every single facility for the capacity as designed and a capacity as currently used, including portables. I'll show you that example in just a minute. We also have total capacity. So that's the capacity based on the state code requirements, based on square footage. And this number includes portables. This is the number that was appeared in the demographic report. We also have building capacity. So this is, again, the capacity based on state code requirements of square footage, not including the portables. So again, those two numbers appear in the demographer's report. We have core capacity, and I talked about this a little bit, core capacity based on the function of those assembly spaces, example, cafeteria, gymnasium, etc., and the support spaces needed for those functions. And then we have a plumbing capacity number, and this number is truly based on, this is a plumbing code requirement, and you may not hear about this number as often, but it is more related to the technical requirements of code and the occupant load for the school and the facility. So I'll just pause there. Are there any questions? Should I take questions? Questions? So going into, again, calculating that campus capacity and school population, this designer's formula, this planning formula is a tool only. This is only a tool, and this is not the end-all, be-all determinant for a school population. Just want to bring that forward. This tool is meant to right-size the facility in the best way for the district. And we know that, we recognize that school population and school enrollment is a fluid number over the lifetime of a building. And so this formula endeavors to be able to respond to that fluidity so that you can accommodate students in the right way. So we start with, in this planning formula, we determine a theoretical capacity. So we take the number of homeroom generating spaces, the number of learning spaces that contributes to that number, and that's a baseline value. Then we take that number. So say we have, let's just take it in straight math. Say we have 10 classrooms. 10 classrooms are homeroom classrooms. They accommodate the student enrollment. And then say we've got a teacher to student ratio target of 25. So we can put 25 students in each one of those spaces. That's 250, if I can still do math in my head. Okay? So then, in order to derive a maximum capacity, we take that 250 number and we multiply it by the schedule. So, for instance, if we have, and I'll just actually forward. I hate this slide. Okay, so this is if we have 7 periods in a day. So this is the schedule, and say we have every rectangle here in this example is one box. So one box is one classroom. We can have students in 6 of the 7 periods out of the day. One of those periods, that 5th block, is likely when the class goes to a special or goes to lunch. So they leave the room, and that is a teacher's planning period. So we would say that this classroom is used 6/7 out of the day, okay, which is a rough percentage. It probably is going to be so 0.857%. So we take that fraction and we multiply it by the theoretical capacity number of 10 times 25, which is 250. And that gives us a lower number. And that is the maximum capacity. That is the highest range that we would recommend the school to use for students. And then to get the target capacity, we multiply that maximum capacity number by a flexibility and an uncertainty factor. And that is meant to give the school some float. So to again, account for fluctuations that might happen in school enrollment over time. So you can see on the math across the bottom, that 32 times 25, that is the theoretical capacity. That's the first part of the equation. And then we take that number multiplied by the schedule, that classroom utilization percentage, that takes into account how much out of the day that classroom is actually serving students. And that gives us our maximum capacity. And then we take that number and we multiply it by another percentage to provide the school and district some float, and that's the target capacity. So those are the three components of the planning formula in order to derive that maximum capacity and target capacity range, which is what we use for our recommendations. So again, that range goes into that leftmost box of median range of classrooms when we're planning. And then, of course, we take into account all of those other components in order to ensure that we complete the building program exercise in order to adequately support the proposed school population. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah, so
Okay.
just to kind of make it, so a school may be built for like a maximum capacity of 800, but the real capacity really is only 652 based on your formula?
It'd be less than that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying based on
Yep.
whatever the schedule is
Sure.
and everything else.
Yes. And you know, at any one time, the school can function between their target capacity and the maximum capacity, right? I mean, that's the point of determining a range. And you know, the formula again is meant to accommodate, you know, best projections of schedule, number of teachers, you know, and the student enrollment from any given year to the next year.
I just wanted to chime in. As a teacher, I appreciate that y'all do that 6/7 percentage, because while that capacity is 800 in the example that you're giving, when I was a teacher at one of our schools in our district, during my planning period, a floating teacher came in my classroom. And so that classroom was being used, so that school was probably functioning at that higher capacity. But as an educator, I really needed that time and that space to grade and plan and that kind of stuff. So from a teacher perspective, I appreciate that.
Any other questions before we keep going? Okay, great. So we did want to just touch on a few different examples to show, to really explain how we moved the calculations through our analysis for this report. So as you can see, Pleasant Hill Elementary School, which we've discussed, you know, we talked about Pleasant Hill having a building capacity and having a total capacity. In this colored key plan, the lighter peach color are the classrooms that we identified in our walkthrough as being used as homeroom enrollment generating classrooms. So you can see that most of the building, you know, is housing enrollment generating classrooms. And then we also discovered that there were 5 portables being used as homeroom generating classrooms, as well as some portables being used as itinerant space. So again, and I know, I'm sorry, these numbers are so small, but this basically shows the formula breakdown. You know, we analyze and account for every single learning space, especially those which should contribute and roll up to the student enrollment. You can see in that first gray column in the middle, it says theoretical student capacity. Again, that's the straight first piece of that formula. We talked about taking the number of students and multiplying it by the number of classrooms. And then that middle gray column gives us the maximum student capacity. So again, that's multiplying the theoretical student capacity by that percentage based on schedule and utilization. And then that rightmost gray column gives us the target student capacity, which is, again, a lower number, and it establishes the lower part of the range. So we did.
Can I interrupt you really quick?
Sure.
So I have a question about this slide, but it also relates to the previous slide. I'll start here.
Okay.
So it says 5 additional on the right-hand column in the notes.
Yes.
5 additional classrooms in portable, 2, 2, and 1. So 7, 8, 9. That's 10 classrooms, including special education, that are in portables at Pleasant Hill, correct?
Yes.
So can you go back to the other slide?
I think
so. Are
that
some of those like
doubles,
portables?
yes, yes.
Okay.
Some of them are double, yes.
And then there's 4. The white are empty. Is that correct, or that we just don't know what they're used for?
They may have been used for space like that is not in the legend, so it might have been used as storage or other.
Okay. Does that take, when you are recommending, so like if we were to look forward at the Pleasant Hill recommendation for, I don't remember what the recommendation, another school or an addition or whatever it is, are we taking into account the white portables, the yellow portables, the peach portables, and the green portables in that number? Are we only taking into account the 10 classrooms that are currently in portables?
So in our recommendations, we try to capture what the school needs. So we have captured the projected growth here. So while it's meant to satisfy what the overage is in the portables, but also what the growth will be at 2035.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess I'm asking, are we going to move the, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation.
Itinerant.
Are we moving those
so that's part
in
of the,
as well?
That's part of the conversation too, because, you know, this is part of our analysis. And again, you're right. Like, we don't want to put anybody, you know, we do not want to put classroom learning spaces in portables. Itinerant office and other functions supporting the school may be appropriate to use in portables. It is really up to the district to decide. But our first line of recommendation is to put all of the classrooms and all of the students in a permanent structure. Forward. So capacity is designed. I've kind of run through this. Capacity is currently used. So this is taking into account those portables as contributing to the student enrollment. And we do this just to again compare. It helps us understand how the facility overall is being used. And just to touch on the itinerant spaces a little bit more, you know, what we have found in school design, you know, especially over the past dozen years, is that schools at all levels need more office support space. There are more support programs that need to be accommodated and housed in a school. That doesn't necessarily mean that itinerant office needs an 800 square foot classroom, but it may need, they could use a 200 square foot conference room or small office. So it's important to include and capture those spaces in the conversation. Okay, so any questions, sorry, about Pleasant Hill before we move forward? Okay, I'll move on to our middle school example. So Beechwood Middle School, we walked this space again, and then we identified the classroom spaces in that peach color. We reviewed the capacity as designed. So that gives us a range of over 1,000 to 1,130 roughly designed. We reviewed the capacity as currently used, and you can see that the capacity as currently used gives us a range of 986 to a little over 1,000, which is less than its capacity as designed. But you will probably recall that we're proposing to add on to this school in order to satisfy the 2035 enrollment projected to be 1,200. Are there any questions there? Okay, and then for our last example is Gilbert High School. Again, we were proposing additions here, so wanted to bring that example forward. The capacity as designed, as we reviewed it in our planning formula, was right at 1,400 to 1,472, so a tighter range there. Capacity is currently used. It's 1,260 to 1320, so it's a little less than what's currently designed. But again, our additions are being proposed to satisfy the 2035 enrollment of over 1,600. Any questions there? So before I let Clark take over, I just want to mention that, again, the capacity number that we've used throughout our report is a planning tool. And so it is meant to put forward a recommendation which can be accepted or revised per district leadership and per decision by the board. So just wanted to remind you all of that.
Dr. Price, did you want to wrap these last two slides up?
So now looking at potential next steps, you may recognize this slide from an earlier presentation, but because we paused to come back and revisit capacity to make sure we had a clear understanding and clear up any lingering questions there, where we go from here. So between July and September, we'll begin developing the 5- and 10-year facility plan based on the report that we've received, and begin any land inquiries that we're ready to. There were a few new build recommendations that were in the plan. We've got to find land for where those things may be if we decide if those become part of the 5- and 10-year plan. But then from October to January, that's when we begin doing our community input sessions. We'll have attendance area meetings, community meetings, out and collecting surveys based off of the 5- and 10-year plan. After we receive the feedback from those meetings and surveys, we'll do revisions based on the feedback. Then the board will officially adopt a 5- to 10-year plan. And we begin exploring funding options for everything that has been included. So all of that is the same. We've just shifted it to make sure that we address these questions first. And so the question that Smith touched on this whenever she was giving her presentation, is that these recommendations are with the understanding that we're trying for long-term planning to make sure that all of our classroom spaces, all of our instructional time is occurring in non-portables. They're occurring in permanent building spaces. So if that's the plan that we want to continue with, then that aligns with the, many of the recommendations that have been given up to this point. Question is do we want to consider portables as a long-term solution or a temporary solution? Because if we're considering them as long-term solutions, then obviously that would impact our 5- and 10-year plans based on capacity. So I hope that makes sense, but the goal is to work ourselves out of portable use and use them for temporary short-term remedies whenever we have outgrown our existing facilities.
Price, board members, do you have any comments or questions at this time?
So yes, I appreciate you all sharing. I mean, Ms. Smith, thank you for coming and kind of breaking down the math and so forth. I think one of the things that's concerning me is we're talking about our long-range plans. We're talking about, building new facilities. Do we want to rely on portables or not? But I don't necessarily think we're going to go back and cure our other facilities that have portables. So I guess I'm wondering, sound like I'm going in and out. I guess what I'm wondering is, are you asking the board for direction on what does our long-range plan want to be for all of our facilities or just our new facilities?
Correct. It's all, because if you look at the proposals, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cooper or Ms. Smith, if you go back and look at that entire plan, there were many facilities that did not, there were no recommendations for additions, maybe some renovation or some long-term site work for maintenance. But then there were a list that were included for additional classroom construction to get us out of using portables on a permanent basis over the next 5 to 10 years. And then there were new builds because of the growth that's projected to get us out of portables. So it was a combination. So some of both of those are considered there. But if portables are going to be part of our long-term solution, that we want to plan to use those and not get our students out of portables, then that will greatly impact the 5 and 10 year plan that we bring forward.
I could just add one thing to that, Dr. Price. I look at it as being more of a thematic question that we're asking. Is that a desire to move that way, to reduce portables? That there probably will always be a need for a portable classroom in Lexington 1. We're a fast-growing area, and you can't always solve it by building the new building. Another thing that's part of it would be perhaps there could be situations that were mentioned earlier of rezoning. I think in some presentations past, that's also another strategy to try to maximize your facility use, but still preserve the importance of having your home school. So I look at it as more of a thematic direction that we're asking for. Is that a strategy we want to employ, reducing the classroom portables in Lexington 1?
Right,
And
Ms.
If I could add, because we've worked together in doing some research on the priority in the district of reducing the use of portables, and this is not a new priority. We have the 2004 bond referendum, which was really the first referendum where there was the attention brought to, this is how many portables we have in the district, this is how fast we're growing, and this is one of the reasons why we're building. Pleasant Hill Elementary was a product of that bond referendum. And you can see, even though the effort, to Clark's point, the effort to reduce portables has not been very successful in that area, but it has still remained a long-term strategy of the district because portables overall are looked at as a temporary solution for safety reasons, for ideal learning environments. They're just not the ideal environment. So in 2004, that was a priority in developing that facility plan. In 2008, that was a priority. In 2018. So it has been a long-standing district standard, and what we're asking is that, and so we did not say to them based on just what we wanted or what senior leadership and the administrators wanted. It has been established that is a long-standing Lexington 1 trend or standard in developing our facility studies.
Right. I mean, as a board member, I've never had someone come say, yes, we want y'all to add more portables. Yes, we want our children. And even as a parent, I can think about my kids. They had some fabulous years with Miss Graft and Miss Bulick and portables at Oak Grove Elementary School. What happened in the classroom was fantastic, but there were days they came home and their shoes were soaked. They had spent their whole day in wet tennis shoes at school because they walked through rain to get to their classroom. And that's the part where, when you're focused on my feet are cold, my feet are wet, you're not listening to what teachers are teaching you about nouns and verbs and that kind of thing. So,
yeah, I think in a perfect world we'd love to see no portables. I don't think that's a reality, though. I think there's like we've said, things change. We may plan for one growth, and then you never know what could happen. I myself came from portables. In fact, when I was at Lexington Middle School, we loved being in portables because it had the best air condition. And we've heard from some teachers that have said, hey, don't take my portable away from me because they like being in that area. But a question I have for you, Dr. Price, is we've heard, and I don't know actually, but I've heard that we have some schools where portables are being used, but we have empty classrooms. Who makes a decision of how they are used at a school? Is it come from the district office, or is that the principal that gets to make that decision?
It's typically done in collaboration with both. And so ideally what you've got as exactly what Ms. Smith said is ideally you've got classroom spaces being used inside the building, but you may have itinerant spaces such as an intervention period or something like that where they go out to a portable. But ideally it's your core instructional classrooms. Those are inside the permanent facility. But then when you've got a situation like Pleasant Hill is faced with, there's not enough inside core space. So she's got core instruction that's happening out back in portables. So ideally, principals are pretty consistent with making those decisions. The goal is to get your core instruction inside the building. Portables outside when you've maxed that out.
Yeah, and I think it might be a good idea for moving along with the plan, since we're actually putting a 5 and 10 year plan, that maybe we get some reports, biannually or something else. What is being used? Are we using classrooms? Are we using portables? So that way we have a better idea of what space is being used for what.
I'll piggyback on what you're saying. The February presentation that you brought to us, there was a slide for Meadow Glen Elementary School, for example. It says at or exceeding calculated max capacity. Already, there's a note, already using portables for all of 5th grade. And then under that it says 5 vacant classrooms inside. So I'm just curious, are we looking at, why that is? Like you said, Nick, maybe some teachers prefer to be out in the portables, or maybe those classrooms inside are being used for something else, but the notes on your slide that specifically says 5 vacant classrooms inside, but they're already using portables for all of 5th grade. I'm curious, are there more schools doing that? Are they preferring portables over classrooms?
Yeah, not knowing the answer to that question off the top of my head, that's something that we can research.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's important to know before we start moving on to our 5 and 10 year plan.
I think that to dovetail on that, my concern, I kind of have a question to answer your question. Because my concern is if we say, okay, our plan is to reduce reliance on portables, what exactly does that mean? Because the public hears that and thinks their students not going to ever be in a portable because we built a new school. And that's where we get ourselves into a PR challenge with the public of, well, you told me if we built this new school and we approved this bond referendum that my kids wouldn't be in a portable, and then we turn around and we still have kids in a portable. So I would want a little bit more detail as when you say reduce reliance on portables, what does that look like by entity? Knowing that we also just need to be honest with our public that if growth outpaces what we're predicting, if we move forward with a plan, we may have to bring a portable in for a period of unknown time. And I just think that has to be really clear to what does a reduction in reliance on portables mean. And then second, can we go back to the slide right before this? Develop initial 5 and 10 year draft facility plans. I would like us to have 5 and 10 year capital improvement plans beyond just facilities. So I don't know if that's a second part of this process, if the facility planning is part of the capital improvement plan, but I don't think just having facility plans for 5 and 10 years goes as far as we need to.
Yes, ma'am, and that was brought up before we even engaged in the facility study, and that's something that Mr. Cooper and his team are working to bring to the board moving forward.
I guess to render my opinion about reliance on portables, or kind of moving, I guess that last slide. Can you go back to that last slide? So reducing our reliance on portables or having portables remain a part of the district's long-term capacity strategy. To me, I don't think we just live in this world of absolutes, to kind of piggyback on what Ms. Flashnick's saying. I don't think you can say Lexington 1 will no longer ever have a portable, because I think you're getting ready to shoot yourself in the foot. At the same time, I don't think you can come out and say Lexington 1's going to put portables wherever we need to put them, wherever, because our public is going to hear that instead of us building schools for the right size or us projecting, we're just relying on, I'll throw however many portables out there that I need to. The concern that I have for the public is we have a theoretical capacity, and then you have a wonderful formula for calculating a target capacity. With our county council, they're trying to use their concurrency to determine whether they're going to allow other subdivisions and so forth to be built. I guess what really boils down to us is, are we going to report a target capacity to them, or are we going to report a theoretical capacity? I think that's been the question, is what capacity is going to go on paper to go to them to make decisions with.
We've already received the first request of that nature, and what we sent them were two numbers. One, because they didn't specify which one they wanted. So we gave them the target student capacity of the building, as well as the total capacity using portables. So we gave them both numbers.
And that's the same numbers utilized by the demographer and the facility study. We've tried to remain consistent.
So I think that's important for us to know, and I think that's important for the public to know, that what we are doing as a school district is when we're asked for concurrency, we are giving them both our target capacity based on this formula, but also a building capacity. We are giving them both. Now, I think it is up to us as board members and our county council members to keep our communication lines open to make sure that they understand we're giving them both, and this is what those both mean. So let's not misunderstand each other and then go out and start making public statements using one or the other without context. I think that's our responsibility and our council's responsibility.
An updated slide, you know, those percentage slides that we have from both demographer and MPS, could we somehow get a spreadsheet that has the target student and then the total using portable numbers for each of the facilities? It could just be a simple spreadsheet, because I do think we as a body have a responsibility, to Mr. Rice's point, to help educate our county council as to those are the numbers that we're using and what exactly do those numbers mean. Because it's taken us this long to get here to understand it, and we as a board sort of live in this space and they don't. So I think if we could, because what they see right now are those red percentages, and in their head, they're looking at this school is 96%, and that's the soundbite that the county council or planning commission is using. And if we could get an updated number that matches what you're going to send them when asked, I think that would be helpful.
Yes, ma'am. We're trying to give them as much information as we can that they're asking for, and then giving them more details. For example, in the last request that they asked about, one of the developments was in the Lexington High attendance zone. And you know, Lexington High, if you go back and review that page, is over capacity based on student, but the way they utilize that campus in LTC with over 300 students per block going next door, they're actually, when you count the classrooms that they're using over there, they're under capacity. Right, and all of those things. And so we provided those extra details with them about that specific school because the numbers didn't tell the whole story. In addition to that, we went down and presented to the Planning Commission earlier this school year about that very fact and why certain numbers may not tell the whole story. And we've received an invitation by the Planning Commission to go back and present again the results of our facility study and looking ahead. They are not asking for what are your projections from the time that the development is built out. They're asking for right now. And so we're trying to give them all of that information. It's more than just a number, and we're trying to make sure that we provide those details to them so that they can make a fully informed decision. And so we are working to solidify a date to go present to them either this summer or in the fall about the results of our facility study as well. So we want to provide them with all the information they're asking for and additional details that they're not. So we'll make sure that we do that as well.
So, Dr. Price, I'll just say I feel like you all are on the right track. That makes me feel a lot more confident that you're being very transparent in your communication to them in terms of what's our capacity, you know, what are our restrictions, what's our building capacity, what's our target capacity. So I do appreciate that. I just think we have to have a continuing, ongoing conversation. I'm just going to give you my last opinion. I think this is my last point, but please give me grace if it's not. I would say from a long-term capacity strategy, I'm not willing to just go right online and say, hey, there's no portable whatsoever. I would just say to try and as efficiently as possible use our spaces. And if we just get outgrown, you just have to do it. So, I mean, I don't want to handcuff you all, so to speak, as to this is exactly what you all have to do every single situation, but just help us understand, you know, hey, we're in a position where we just put in a new subdivision and we've got X number of homes, and now that's put burden on this school. So we're probably going to have to utilize 4, 5, 6 portables, you know, here. Just, I think if you educate us, then we can help educate the public to, you know.
I think we're all saying the same thing, maybe just using some different words, is that the goal is to get our core instructional use of our schools out of the dependency on portables. Not saying that we will never use a portable again if this passes. There are always different challenges, and that was one of the presentations we talked about at our last meeting, is that the needs of our students continue to evolve. The need for intervention and for one-to-one instruction and individualized work, those things continue to happen, and we continue to need spaces for those things. But ideally, our typical instructional day happens inside a permanent facility, and these portables are used to assist in special accommodations or in unexpected growth that then gives us a short-term solution for that particular problem until we work out a more permanent solution. It's not, hey, this campus can hold up to 15 portables. So let's plan to use 15 portables on that site all the time and only consider renovations, additions, or new construction after we've maximized every space that could be used to host a portable on every campus. That's what we're trying to get to. That's never been this district's focus when going through a facility study like this or any past bond referenda. It's trying to accommodate the growth and the maximal use of the school building. So, and I think that's the bottom line is, are we going to maximize potential portable spaces on campus, or to try to get ourselves out of this and use portables when those unexpected challenges exist appear as a short-term solution? Mr. Cooper looked like he wanted to say something. I may have said what you were going to say, but if you had something else, I want to give you the opportunity to speak.
Yes, sir. That was that, and then I just want a question from Ms. Flashnick, just so I'm clear, in terms of an updated percentage chart. I just want to make sure I clearly explained.
I didn't want a percentage. I wanted to, if we could just get, if you're going to give county council target student capacity for each of the facilities and total using portables for each of the facilities, can we just get what those numbers are? Not what they are as in what are we using, what are the actual benchmark numbers, like it's 800 and it's 852.
Yes.
Because the red slide is like swirling around and that's all people are hearing.
Yes. And those numbers, the ones that I've give county council, are the ones that the demographer used in their report. It's the building capacity. So for Pleasant Hill, 680, and it is the building plus portable. So for Pleasant Hill, 1160. I provide both of those, but those are the numbers that I use for capacity with the county.
Okay, so you're giving them building capacity and then total capacity, not target student and total. That's what I wrote down.
You're correct. Okay. Yes, you're correct. Building capacity, and then if portables exist, total capacity.
A comment I'd like to make, and I don't know how this will be taken, not in this room, but other places. I appreciate, Dr. Price, that y'all are being as transparent and giving the information even more than what's required to county council. The problem I see is no matter what information we give, there's going to be some on that council that don't care what we send them. And they're looking at one number and one number only. So I think it's our job, meaning the board and district, to make sure that we are letting the public know what the actual true scenarios are. because in the world of politics, you're not always going to get the true answers from people.
Pizzuti, I think that was part of some of the attempt to put together those small groups of so many body members here, so many body members from county council, so many body members from towns. So since that has sort of fallen apart, I think that the best option is for each of us to just make sure that we keep the lines of communication open with respective council members, either that we know or that we want to build a better relationship with and help bridge that gap, because the district has a great relationship with the administration, and Dr. Price has done a great job just meeting with them and keeping those lines of communication open. It's the political body side that has become the challenge. So I think that's on our shoulders to help solve a little bit.
Well, Dr. Price, back to this question, do you feel like you have the answer that you need from the board, or is it clear what the strategy we've given you, or do we still need to unpack for you that answer?
Well, I think I've made a statement, and if there was any disagreement with the statement I made about not maximizing potential portable space on every campus before we consider a classroom addition or a new construction, then I think we're all on the same page. But if the board thinks differently, that we need to maximize portables and build that into our long-range planning, so that we can maximize portables in every space before we consider an addition or a new build, then that's going to be a different direction than we've taken up to this point. So that was what we were trying to get to make sure that we're all on the same page, is working our core instructional experiences for teachers and students into a permanent facility and not counting on using portables for long-range goals.
I would agree to that statement, but I think the main thing we have to realize when doing that is that when we're looking at these 5-10-year plans, when we're planning these buildings or facilities to build them, that make sure we're building them not just to cover growth for 4 or 5 years, but make sure that we actually plan it out and make sure these buildings are sufficient enough to handle the growth as best we can, knowing that we may have to use portables if necessary.
Absolutely, and I think that's where MPS has done a commendable job taking all the information from the demographer and giving us an immediate 5-year plan, but also a 10-year outlook, but about what we need to be prepared for. And so the recommendations, and that's what they've done, is give us recommendations based on that data, as well as them walking every campus on our district and trying to see how the story of our current district matches with the predictions of the demographer to give their best recommendations for our path forward with all the goals that we've talked about. So I think we're headed in that direction, and I just want to take the opportunity again to thank MPS for all of their work to give us some pretty clear recommendations about where we should go. And so from now, we go to that plan to see what that looks like moving forward.
I was just going to say, and I think there's another part to it too, though, for moving forward and building new buildings. I think we do need to look at how we build, new schools, and not doing the same thing we've always done. Maybe looking at, I know y'all have your formula, but why don't we build it off of core capacity instead of, large number and then dumbing it down to a small number, but knowing that you're probably going to go over that number and end up using portables. I'm really still not sure why we do that, because then we end up needing portables. But if we could maybe design a school off of the projected, now that we have this 5 and 10-year projected numbers, growth numbers, as we look to the future of building new buildings, then we can build off of those numbers and maybe, I think the goal would always, ideally be that we don't have portables at schools, even though we know that that's not always where we are now with what we've built in the past. But moving forward, I think we should look at doing things a little differently.
Price, one big thing that's still hanging me up with these plans, and I'm just asking for kind of a conceptual idea of when we will talk about it again, going from a model of elementary and middle to a model of primary basically splitting the elementary schools. We don't currently do that. We got ourselves out of it. Now when will we unpack that again as a board? Because I think there's some deeper instructional conversations and operational cost conversations to be had if we are really planning to go that direction.
Yes, ma'am. That'll be part of the ongoing conversation, especially when we start doing surveys that we're sending out and having community meetings and taking a look at the recommendations that were made. We'll be collecting all of that feedback at that time, diving into those questions and taking a look at what options we have if we choose to go in a different direction.
So I want to make sure I'm clear, because Ms. McCown, I want to make sure I don't misunderstand what you said. I think you're in line with what we were talking about trying to, you would almost allow the district to still kind of put some portables in, but you'd like for us to look at maybe designing our core capacity to house all the students and not rely on portables. Is that correct? Just moving forward.
I just feel like if you want to build a school that can hold, say, all the students for a pep rally in the gym, why aren't we building the school to then house all of those students that are in the gym at one time to all have a place to go after that to a classroom?
Well, I wonder. I don't know that there's ever been a time the district has intentionally said, let's build a smaller school that's not going to meet the needs at this time. So I think it's just been we've grown quickly. I don't think there's ever been intentionally a time where we've built a school knowing that it wasn't going to meet the needs.
Of the data, did they seek the data to know what the long range facilities and plans and numbers, and did they do?
I mean, they were talking about even back
diligence?
to 2004 with these things, and in 2018, I think
He was talking about the bond referendum, though. Not
I think it was the bond referendum was built on facility plans, and an issue that from the research. In fact, I had many great conversations, and I have to thank our becoming our resident historian here, Ms. Mitchum. We had conversations about going into that 2004 bond referendum. There were a lot of discussions at the time, and I was just beginning my career here, and I can't really remember much of this, but there were a lot of discussions around the ideal size of a school. So I think where there were some contradictions and where things didn't line up was the ideal size at the time for an elementary school based on the best research was 600. And I'm looking at my architects over there, was 600. And that was based on what was best for the learning environment at the time. We were a fast-growing district, and trying to make that work in a fast-growing district, we can see was not, the two contradicted, the two butted heads, and we learned quickly because Pleasant Hill Elementary actually opened with portables. So to your point, Ms. McCown, you have to have, in that planning phase, we have to take into consideration what is research telling us is the ideal size, but will that ideal size work in our district at the rate we are growing? And if not, then we have to adjust what we think is going to be the ideal size for Lexington 1 so that we can still maybe remain in a size that's functionally operational for a school, but at the same time is going to be able to accommodate that future growth. And what you get into, and it's not to say those ideal size, they were wrong, that's what, makes you have a car line that doesn't go out into the road, right? That you can get through drop off without students being tardy. It's where every principal can know every kid's name in elementary school. I mean, there's lots of research, and somehow Margaret Mitchum can do that with 900 kids. But and with the high schools, high schools that are 3,000 or plus students, that becomes a real challenge to operate. And the more students you have, the more administrators you need. So I think that's a discussion that you have to have in that planning phase, is what is research telling you is the ideal size? And architects over there, please speak up if I'm misspeaking, but what does research tell you is the ideal size for schools right now? And then how does that overlay with how we are growing? Because we may not be able to build something at an ideal size because we may outpace that.
I think that's what Mrs. McCown is saying, is that's probably a question, as you said, to answer through this process. What are the ideal sizes of elementary, middle, and high for Lexington 1, not just today, but for 5 and 10 years from now?
Board, thank you so much for carving out time this morning. Thank you so much, Ms. Smith, for coming to speak. Joel and Cecilia, thank you for being available also. Ms. Mitchum, thank you for taking time to come. We will hold a board workshop this Friday, May 8th at 8 a.m. to continue discussion regarding the 26-27 general fund operating budget, and our regularly scheduled monthly board meeting is scheduled for May 19th. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, before I make a motion to adjourn, I would like to say that, you know me, the sports guy, high school playoffs started this week, so good luck to all the Lexington District 1 athletes in playoffs, and to the seniors, as it is full throttle right now, speaking from experience. With that said, Madam Chair, I move to adjourn.
And congrats to your senior on making the USC cheer team. All right, do I have a second to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned.